Hello again. Welcome to Equip Classroom, to another exciting experience with your guide, me, Mrs. Davis. The goal, as you know, is to create a fun teaching video that engages your class, whether it be a public, private, or homeschool setting. It's rigorous, real-life reading and writing experiences that we want to provide for you. And as former educators, we know full well how time-consuming preparing curriculum can be on a daily basis. So if you're homeschooling, these lessons will offer you a chance to give your students high-quality reading and writing instruction without the burden falling on you to put it all together. The videos also have accompanying teaching decks that are super helpful if you need to prepare a sub-lesson. They're done for you. Just send this video and your copy of the teaching deck to your sub and move on with your day. Therefore, this video has been created for you to use as a complete lesson or as a supplement for your own in-class instruction. Please visit the Equip website so you can learn how to receive for free the matching teaching slide deck to this lesson. The link to our website is simple, equipclassroom.org. However, you can also find the hot link located on our YouTube homepage or in the details at the bottom of this video and on the last slide of the teaching deck if that's where you started. While you're at it, please subscribe to this YouTube channel. It gives us a lot of opportunities to continue growing and creating lessons for you. And finally, if you have any questions or if you have any ideas that you would like to see us prepare for you or just to put up on this website, please email us at janice@equipclassroom.org. And now, moving on to a little bit of housekeeping. You're going to find, as I mentioned, this exact slide deck linked to the Equip Classroom website at equipclassroom.org. Therefore, when you look at this video, if you want the slide deck to teach it on your own or just to have it available, you can do that. Again, it's free. Every video and every slide deck is free to anyone who wants to use them. You can share some quality reading and writing experiences with your students this way. And you're welcome to make a copy of the slide deck so that you can modify it to fit your specific age and classroom. However, we ask that you please honor these copyright requests whenever you are doing so. These are directions that you can refer to for just general usage of the video and or the teaching deck. And as always, we include references to the most significant standards and essential questions just to help you organize your lessons and pacing throughout the year as well. So as today's lesson begins, this is this really engaging strategy where students are going to preview new words from the same text. They're going to make a list of at least 3 to 4 meaningful categories with these words, and then they're going to give each category a big idea title. The focus is to give them a preview of a text while exposing them to some of the descriptive language within the story. It gives them a chance to experience this text before they actually start reading it. The next slide will begin the student-centered portion of the lesson, so you might want to cue it up to this point, and I'll pause for a moment to get you there. Hello, students. Welcome to another exciting edition of Reading and Writing with Mrs. Davis in Equip Classroom. Today you're going to get to read a really funny story about a little boy named Charles. But as you read, make sure you pay close attention to clues along the way. They're going to lead you to a surprise ending. But before you read the story, let's actually start off with a little prediction activity. Make sure you have a copy of your interactive notebook page titled Charles. Look over this list of words from today's story. It's on your notebook page. You'll either have it on your computer or your teacher has given you a hard copy of it. With your group, you're going to need to look at these words and organize them in categories. Come up with something that has a common meaning or use, not spelling or anything silly like that. You're looking for the way that you can organize them so that your category headings help you begin to make sense out of what this story might be about. So your categories should be based on vocabulary and word usage. For example, you can see on your document that I've given you the category school words. And some of the words from this chart that would fit would be kindergarten, learn, lunch, teacher, and detention. Now your group needs to come up with at least 4 categories of words with those big titles. You can use the example of school words to help you get started if you like. When your timer goes off, be prepared to share your big ideas with the class. And then we're going to talk about how those ideas go together to make some predictions about what the story's theme or main idea might be. Your teacher will pause the video here so you can do your inductive work. All right, time to share out. First, we're going to take turns sharing the category titles that you've written with your group. You may want to share some of the specific words that you included as well. We'll have every group share their category headings before we make any further predictions. So right now you're just going to tell us what your categories were and if you want a few of the words. Your teacher will pause the video here so you guys have time to share out. And now it's time to share your predictions. So think about what you've heard from all of your classmates and think about what you talked about in your group. And then use all of that information. What do you predict is the main idea or the theme of this story? It's a fictional story. You're going to need to use some of the evidence from your categories or the things that you've heard from your groups to prove your idea. You'll have 3 minutes to discuss everything you've heard and with your group, and then we're going to make whole class predictions. So make sure you're ready to tell us your ideas in complete sentences. Make sure you're recording your notes on your interactive notebook as well. Your 3 minutes starts now. Alrighty, your predictions were really good. Let's see how close you are. It's time to read the story. As you read or listen to it, I want you to keep track of all the key words the author uses that brings out the descriptive and important details for every part of the plot. And remember that there is a surprise ending, so keep a sharp ear out for any clues that might make you go, huh? Because those might be important. At this point, your teacher is either going to read the story to you or give you the secret clue on how to find the story on your computer to read it to yourself. While you're doing that, whether you're listening or whether you're reading, in your interactive notebook, make sure you use this chart and make all of the notes that you can about the parts of the plot. Listen specifically for words that tell about the setting, the characters, the action. Pay close attention. Have fun. Enjoy this great story. I'll be back with you in a few minutes. All right, time for the exit ticket. This is the end of the first part of this mini unit on the story Charles. I hope you enjoyed the ending and hope you understood that Charles and Lori are the same person. So now that you've read the whole story, you're going to search for what you think are the 2 best quotes from the rising action that give hints to the surprise ending. Make sure you're looking in the rising action. And you may need to go back and reread a bit to see those details from a different perspective. The one that means now you know how it ends. So go back and look for things that you missed the first time, that you know how it ends. Now that you know that Lori is Charles, look for things that you can go, oh, I see why that happened now. And make sure you choose 2 quotes and explain why those are 2 quotes that really help you understand what it is about this whole story that you needed to know from the very beginning. Teachers, this is the beginning of part 2. We're focusing on analyzing theme in this section. This may be the same day or it may be another day, and I'll pause for a minute so that you can cue this up. Hello again, students. Remember our story from part 1 about Charles? Well, Lori, I mean. So today we're going to use that same story and we're going to further our skills on analyzing theme. So let's start with a quick review. What does it mean to analyze theme? You look for the main idea, the lesson of the story, and you look for evidence from the beginning, middle, and end. If you can't find evidence from the beginning, middle, and end, then it's probably not the theme of the whole story. This is the theme of Charles. People can be blind to the flaws of those closest to them, even enabling these flaws at times. Think about this for a minute. Charles's parents, Lori's parents, were blind to the flaws that he had. In fact, a lot of what they said and did enabled him. He kept behaving badly because his parents didn't get it, and they thought that he was so good. And so they enabled his flaws, and they didn't even realize it. Now, there are other themes for this story. but that's the one that we're going to focus on for today's activity. You're going to work with your partners to analyze some pivotal scenes from the story. They will either support or not this theme. People can be blind to the flaws of those closest to them, even enabling these flaws at times. We're going to look for evidence in the beginning, middle, and end. Remember, that's very important. And I've already given you the theme, so you don't have to come up with it this time. You're just looking for the places in the story where the theme really shows up best. You're going to notice that these scenes are either in your notes or possibly on charts posted around your room. Take time with your group to talk about how each of these 5 scenes does or does not support the theme. And then in your notes, make sure you record some information that shows your group's conversation on those key points. By the way, not all of the scenes support the theme, so be careful. When you've seen all 5 scenes, return with your group, or if you've been working with your group all to begin with, make sure that you scroll down to part 2 and record notes on what you've talked about with these 5 scenes and whether or not they support the theme, and then summarizing your final ideas, your final decisions for each one of the passages, yes or no. Your teacher will pause the video now and give you time to do this activity. In case you need it, here is scene 1. This is for the teacher to show. Here is scene 2, scene 3, scene 4, and scene 5. All right, students, as we wrap up this second part of this, it's time to show what you're learning again. So make sure you complete today's exit ticket well. When you're thinking about this, you'll need to use complete sentences to show strong details of your thinking. In the middle column of the document titled, "Which part of the plot is it?" you need to write one of those 5 plot elements. Is it exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, or resolution? Remember, the resolution in this story is very, very short at the very, very end, so that might not be your best place to look for any other type of pivotal scene that proves this theme. And remember, you can't use any of the ones you've been looking at in this lesson. You need to find something different. Good luck, and I will see you again later. Teachers, this is the beginning of part 3. This is the last part of the lesson on the story Charles, and I will pause here for a moment so that you can cue it up to this page for your students. Hello again, students. We are on the last part of this lesson using this hysterical story, Charles, or Lori. When something happens in your life and it really changes you or what you think, how do you respond? We've been reading and studying this story about Lori, aka Charles, and we've analyzed theme and the key story parts so far. But in this final lesson, you're going to follow Lori's path through the story to keep a keen reader's eye for the way he responds to the changes that are happening in his life and at school. But we're going to do it with a little video that I think you'll enjoy as an example. Open your interactive notebook to part 3 for today's notes. As you watch this video, make notes on how the birds are responding to the changes that are affecting them. And you can just make a list. You don't have to make a complete sentence at this time. So what'd you think of that video? I know some of you have seen it before, but it's pretty amusing. And we're going to use this video to practice looking at changes and response to change in characters through a story. So I want you to think about what we do with that video, because you're going to do the same work from the story Charles as your final quiz for this unit. So let's look first at the part of your notebook called Part 3, and that's where you're going to look at these parts of the video. It's called Analyzing Scenes. And we're going to start off by looking at these places where something happens up until the climax. And we're looking for what changes occurred and what was the result of that action. So first, how did the birds respond to the actions of the others? Make notes as you discuss this in your group. Look at your chart, follow along, and when the timer goes off, then you're going to have a chance to share your thinking with the class. And we'll talk more about how that looks. So your teacher is going to pause the video here and give you time to look at this part and think about what were the changes that occurred when the big bird landed on the little birds landed on the wire. What were the responses in the rising action when the big bird came around? What were the changes when the big bird flew over them? And what were the responses when the little birds caused the big bird to fall off the wire? By the way, notice that's the climax. So take some time, analyze this, and then we'll come back together in a few minutes. Hopefully you found some good information and that you've talked about it. Did you notice that in the exposition, one of the major changes was the wire is drooping, the birds are getting smushed together? Their response, they started chirping at each other, and they were pecking at each other, and they were bugging each other. Then in the rising action, the little birds stopped chirping at each other, and they silently looked at the big bird when he came on. And their response was they started to make fun of him. Then the second part of the rising action, when the big bird flew over and landed in the middle of them, the wire dropped way down in the middle, and all the little birds slid in really close to him, and they didn't want to, so they were angry. And then they started squawking, and he started squawking, and that made them even angrier because he thought he was chiming in, and they thought he was making fun of them. So then they started pecking at him, and they caused him to fall backwards on the wire, hanging by his toes. What was the response to that? Well, that's when the bird fell off, and of course, all the little birds flew up in the air. And their response, before they flew off, what was the key thing that was noted real quickly by the one bird, his response, before they all flew off? Did you notice? He realized what was going to happen, and he desperately tried to stop them, but it was too late. So those are some of the things that you could have had in your notes. Now, let's look at cause and effect. When you're looking at the way a character changes and their response to change, you want to watch the story for little things that happen that show the character is changing. So think about, through Charles, little things that happened to Laurie that caused him to change, or that caused him to respond to something that was changing. As we look at the second part of the video, we're looking at the falling action and the resolution. Once the big bird falls to the ground, there's a lot of cause and effect that happens. This is often the place in the story where you really need to stop and analyze how are those characters responding to change. After all, that's what cause and effect means. What causes something? The change. How does it affect others? The response. So look at the second chart for today's work on your page titled Cause and Effect. And think about these three scenarios in the story, and then report the effect in your notes. So let's look at the first one together. Because the big bird falls to the ground, what happens? Then there's the effect. What happens? Yes, the little birds fling up in the air. That's what you write down. Make sure you put that in your notes, and now you do the next two. We'll pause here, and then we'll come back together in just a moment to wrap it up. So it's time to analyze how the characters all responded to changes or causes in this little short bird video. So when you look at it, think about the notes you talked about and shared, and then write 2 or 3 sentences for each column that clearly explains how the characters changed from the beginning to the end of the story. How did the big bird change from the beginning to the end? How did the little birds change from the beginning to the end? What was their response to change? What caused them to change? So I gave you some sentence starters that you might want to use. In the beginning of the video, he was how? But by the end, he was something else. This happened because. And the cause effect is the way that you would talk about their response to change. Take some time to do that now, and then we will move on to your actual quiz, which will be your final project for this unit. All right, here we are, your final exit ticket. And now we're thinking about Charles. We've talked about the change and the response to change in the video that we watched with the birds, how they caused each other to have change, how they responded to the change, and what happened. Now think about this story. You may want to open it up again and look at it. You're going to use this chart to help you complete your final exit ticket. You're applying what you've learned. So in this one, you're going to look at the way that Charles or Lori changed throughout the story. What happened as he went through his first few weeks of school? Use your chart to help you take notes and use the bullets here as some clues along the way. Make sure you follow your directions carefully and make sure that you complete it well because this will be for a quiz grade. Thanks for spending time with me in this lesson, and I hope that you have a great time and do very, very well. Good luck. Until next time, I will see you around.